So dogs aren't programmed with the English language. And I think that's so important because a lot of times people just are hoping to just like talk to their dogs, and they understand they're not exactly um, understanding how to effectively teach everything that the dog needs to know. And I would argue a little bit like what's the most important thing to teach, like what's going to be the most functional thing. So looking in the long run, like what you want to be able to do with your dog, what you kind of expect out of your dog, um, working backwards, reverse engineering to the point where here's like where we should start with the training.
Mm-hmm.
So most people just want their dogs to be well mannered and be like responsive to the things that they're saying. So listening and well mannered, making good choices. Um, so taking steps back at that, when our dog misbehaves, how do we respond in that situation? How do we teach them the right manners? How do we teach them, the come command, sit command, all of that? So we can't just say words to the dogs, because
Mm-hmm.
that would just be like, I probably mentioned this yesterday, just telling a kid to play whatever song on the piano when they don't necessarily know how to play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
So we first teach them, how to get familiar with it, what notes correspond with each key, and then being able to like build a sequence of notes. So that's really where we should start with the dogs is teaching them the leash, teaching them their body language, teaching them how to follow food, and then just getting one set of behaviors, the tiniest little thing, um, and then we stack that on top of each other. So for me, that's what clear communication looks like, is using not necessarily our language, our words, but um, so we have nonverbal cues.
Mm-hmm.
So the leash, again, food, body language are the big three. But we also have words too. We want to be very predictable with what we say. So teaching the dogs their name is important. And really, what we're looking for when the dog hears their name is attention. Most people, I used to be guilty of this as well, is they're saying their dog's name over and over for they're doing something wrong, or you want them to come, and those are two like very very different things. And your dog does something wrong, we want to be able to say like, "Hey, don't do that," instead of using their name to get them back on us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so teaching them their name is big, and with that attention, we can be getting a lot more just set behaviors from them. If a kid can't pay attention in class, then they're not really going to learn as much as a kid that is paying attention in class.
Yeah.
So the next thing would be, so under the markers is a yes word, clicker training, indicating the fact that your dog did something that we want, and food's going to come. So while that's the ultimate goal, is like, hey, they hear yes and they know they did something right, we've got to put a lot of repetition in first of teaching them that word. So we say yes, we pause, and then we give them a reward. We say yes, we pause, and then we give them a reward. So they start to associate yes with food. Um, so then when our dogs do obedience well, they respond to a command, we can tell them yes. Having a very clear statement of like, you did the right thing. On the other side, when our dog does something just mannerly, we can again say yes and go ahead and reward them. So with time and repetition, they understand the fact that they're getting rewarded because of, you know, not jumping, for being calm on the leash, for being chill. So that really gives us the ability to not only influence obedience and solidify that, but also solidify the manners as well. Um, I feel like that's probably like a really good set just for the foundation there. So um, yeah, I guess I'll finish those points. So I already kind of talked about time and repetition for conditioning that. What you show the dogs is going to be so much more important than what you say. or you've probably run into people who are like, oh, my dog knows sign language. You can do this, and they sit. You can point down, and they down. You can like be inviting, and they come to you. Like that's body language. That's more natural to them than the words that we're saying. So we want to leverage that as much as we can to make things as clear as possible. And then on terms of like getting more of the behaviors that we want, again, there's where positive reinforcement comes in. So that tied with the clarity of rewarding them is really big. So we say, yes, we reward them, positive reinforcement there. So they're very, very crystal clear as to why they're getting rewarded. But if they take like, if they sit and then they take like 5 seconds to reward the dog, it's not necessarily as clear as to why they're getting the reward. So really important to like be able to have specific timing when it comes to rewarding and correcting. So I feel like timing could be a good point to add to this. And then, so positive reinforcement, when we want more good behavior, that's what we want to do. So good behavior leads to good things. Corrections, bad behavior needs to lead to bad things. And bad doesn't always need to be like a harsh leash correction. It can also just be like, hey, I'm not giving you attention. I'm not giving you food. There can be what we call negative corrections, negative punishment as well. Positive punishment would be adding something to the equation. Negative punishment would be removing something, your attention, affection, food, or access as well to a certain space. Positive reinforcement, adding something to the equation to create a higher likelihood that the dog does this behavior again. Negative reinforcement is thinking about more of like the buzzer for your seatbelt, the leash. You tug on the dog's leash and they move your way, they listen, then that leash tension goes away. Negative reinforcement. So really important to understand all 4 of those. So we know in certain situations, like, okay, our dog's pulling on leash, they can't get to that dog across the street because bad behavior leading to good things is that bad equation. So cool. Any questions with any of that?
Not anything specifically. I do want to mention, so the study that I looked at, and we
Yeah,
can get into it
love
later,
it.
but it was focusing on like do as I do training versus like shaping or clicker training, and kind of looking at.
Say that again. So the first part was that do as I do. Okay.
So like,
what do they mean by that?
Essentially, just imitate, and like seemingly, it's not something that a ton of people. I think it's like a newer form of training. Like it's obviously known, but it's basically just imitating actions. So like, seemingly, it's basically like to get a dog to jump